All right, welcome back. Let me ask you something. What if your soul wasn't some big mystery, but was actually a location? Today, we're diving into this really fascinating source material that tries to do just that. Map our very being, our thoughts, our emotions, even our fate, onto a simple 3D grid. It's called the game of coordinates, and trust me, it completely redefines what it means to have a destiny.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Can you actually map a soul? Can you really take all that beautiful chaos of being human? I mean, our passions, our logic, our beliefs, and just plot it all on a simple three-dimensional grid? It's a wild idea for sure, and it's the foundation for everything we're about to get into.
All right, let's set the stage for all this. And we're not talking about just any stage. We're talking about a mathematical one. A space where destiny itself gets to play out. Pretty cool, huh?
Okay, so you probably remember the Cartesian coordinate system from math class, right? Good old X, Y, and Z. Well, forget what you know, because here it's totally transformed. It becomes this living, breathing stage, a framework for charting the very core of human experience, our emotions, our logic, and yes, even our fate.
So to really get this world, we first have to understand its basic dimensions. Let's break down what each axis actually means, one by one.
First up, we've got the x-axis. Think of this as the dimension of pure structure, of cold, hard logic. It's like the architecture of the mind, you know? It's where rational thought and patterns live. And what's really interesting is that this is also the dimension of music, which, when you think about it, is just beautiful mathematical art.
And to make this really hit home, the x-axis is personified by none other than Mozart. But think of him less as just a composer and more like a brilliant analyst of sound itself. His harmonies are these perfect mathematical structures, playing out in exact fractions of time. In this world, Mozart is the logic of music, brought to life. Okay, so if the x-axis is the head, then the y-axis, well, that's the heart. This is the dimension of raw emotion, of internal conflict, and that deeply human drive to find freedom. This is where things get messy. It's unpredictable, and it's incredibly powerful.
And the character that guides us along this axis is a figure from the source material named Nursema. She's basically the embodiment of internal conflict. Her whole story is this raw, emotional journey, a constant battle inside herself and a passionate quest for freedom. See, she doesn't just have feelings. In this world, she literally moves along the axis of feeling.
And that brings us to our third and final dimension, the z-axis. This is the one that pushes us forward into totally new territory. It represents belief, hope, faith, those big turning points in life that change everything and set us on a completely new path. And who represents this? Another figure named Umut. Umut is the vector of hope. This is the character whose whole journey is about moving upward, always pushing toward a stronger sense of self-belief. It's really the axis of transcendence. Okay, so let's just pause for a second and see how this all clicks together. Because the key here is that it's not about being either logical or emotional or hopeful. The model says we're all three, all at the same time. Mozart's logic, Nursema's passion, Umut's hope, they're not separate roads. They're the X, Y, and Z coordinates that pinpoint a single, unique location in this space, a soul.
All right, so we've got our stage, we've defined the axes, now let's look at the players. And in this system, they're not just characters, they are vectors, which is just a cool way of saying they're forces with a specific direction and magnitude moving through this 3D space of existence.
And this is where we see how these forces actually interact. You've got Umut, the vector of hope, always pushing up along that z-axis, toward the future. And then you have Nursema, the vector of conflict, wrestling with the present on the y-axis. You have a journey of belief versus a battle for freedom. And it's that core tension that really puts this whole system into motion. So, we've got the map, we've got the players. Now, it's time for the game to begin. Let's see how this static model becomes a living, breathing story. And this is where it gets really wild, where the abstract idea becomes a literal game. So picture this, a hexagonal floor lights up. The vectors we've been talking about, Umut, Nursema, Mozart, they all activate. But then a totally unexpected player shows up, a cyborg. It starts walking along the glowing lines of the grid, and as it moves, it leaves these shimmering trails behind, like some kind of musical system from the future. The game is officially on.
You know, every great game needs a turning point, right? That one dramatic moment where the rules just get completely thrown out the window? Well, in this game of coordinates, that moment is coming.
All of a sudden, a card appears. And it's not just any card, it's the Queen of Spades, a symbol that usually means, well, trouble, a fateful turn. It floats down onto the game board, and you just know everything's about to change.
But this card doesn't land just anywhere. No, it targets one single critical coordinate, 74. This is not a random number, it is a precise address on this map of destiny, the exact spot where the whole system is designed to fracture. So at this exact coordinate, 74, and on a very specific date in the future, February 4th, 2025, the unthinkable happens. Time itself stops. The game, the music, the struggle, it all just freezes. That cyborg walker, it just stops, dead in his tracks. It turns and it says something monumental and really cryptic. The syntax of your destiny is changing. What does that even mean? It means the basic rules, the fundamental grammar of this reality, are being rewritten from the ground up.
So what does that mean, a change in syntax? It implies the whole language of this reality is changing. And that's exactly what we get in this final, pretty stunning twist.
So how does it change? Off in the distance, the source material shows us one last figure, Descartes. Yeah, the Descartes, the philosopher who basically invented the coordinate system. And he just nods and adds a new axis to the grid. A fourth dimension just appears. The axis of symbols. Reality is no longer just about logic, emotion, and belief. It's just expanded to include a whole new layer of meaning.
So we're left with this incredible map of what it means to be human, built on logic, emotion, belief, and now symbols. And that, of course, leads me to a final question for you. If you could add a fifth axis to the map of your own destiny, what would it represent? What's that other fundamental dimension that truly defines who you are? It's a pretty wild thing to think about. Thanks for exploring all this with us today.